Hi everyone, and welcome to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're talking about our block of the month for the month of July. And to me, July means the 4th of July and our flag. That's what I've chosen for this month. So join us right after this and we'll get started. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi and welcome back. Today we're working on this block for our quilt top for 2024, and also I'll be making a pillow cover out of this because I can see this sitting on my sofa for July right now. So let's get started. It looks really complicated. I don't think it's going to be, but let's see how we do. Now for this project, I'm using the 15 by 15 inch white fabric that we've been using for the other blocks. I am also using, in addition to the 15 by 15 inch square, some strips with the fabric of this. I think there were 2 5-inch strips, 2 6-inch strips, something like that I used. And then I'm using a fat quarter in red and a blue fabric that I already had. If you have the option of using a blue fabric with stars printed on it, that would be a great alternative that would save you some time in this block and may give you a design that you like just as well or better. Let me tell you another step that might help you too and save you some time and make this go really quickly. Some sewing stores, some fabric stores have little patches in the shape of a white star that you might be using on children's clothes or some decorative item. You could also use that and just place it on the blue square. So that might be something you want to look into as well. So let's get started on this. You're going to need to cut your 15 by 15 inch square. You're going to need to cut strips of white fabric and red fabric 1 inch wide. Now, those strips you're going to sew together in pairs, except you're going to leave one red strip loose. Now, I made enough for 2 flags, so I had a little more than you would if you're just making one. But our flag is set up so that in this section that attaches to the blue, there are 7 stripes. And we have starting with the red and ending with the red. And then on the bottom we have 6 stripes. So I suggest you make one set with 6 stripes and one set with 7 stripes. And this one won't need to be quite as long. And I will tell you that I used the foot with the edge that I can put a 1/4 inch seam on, and that worked really well. But when you start sewing the red and the blue and the red and the white that you sewed in pairs, then you're going to start sewing the pairs together. Then it becomes a little more difficult because on one side of the strip you've got more layers of fabric, and it wants to kind of push that fabric out from under the foot, so your seam gets skinnier and skinnier. So just keep that in mind as you do that, to make sure that it's straight and even all the way through. Now I think on mine there's a little bit of a wave from here and there, but as a general rule you don't really notice it. It's not enough that it really grabs your attention. So I put together 6 stripes. That's going to be the bottom section of the flag. And then I put another section together with 6 and added the 7th one here. So there's the 7, and that one's folded down. Okay, so we've got that. It's easy, it's a little time consuming, but it's easy. Then I'm going to have a PDF available for you when this video drops, and for about 3 weeks until the 15th of July. And that PDF is just going to be a printout of the little star we're using. And then I'm going to put my notes on this as well. just as a reminder of some of the things we talked about, the supplies you need, and how to make sure the sizing is correct. So you're going to print out the PDF, or you can go to the internet and get your own 5-pointed star. This one is approximately 2.5 inches from point to point. To make the measurements work, that's about what you're going to need. So you're going to need you're going to need 2 pieces of blue fabric, 4 inches by 4 inches. And then you're going to need 1 white piece of fabric, that same size. Put the white to the side. We're going to work with the blue first. I printed this out and I put it in the center of this block, or as close as I could manage. And then I tried to make sure that the top, let's see, which one was it? It's this one. This is the top. That this line going across, now it's not a completely straight line, but I could kind of try to make sure that it was horizontal on the piece of blue fabric. And you see the paper's all skewed to one side. That's just the way it prints out. And I pinned it in place with all the pin heads on the outside because we're going to be turning this fabric a lot on our machine. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this and sew right on top of the fabric, and then we're going to flip the fabric over so we've got a open space in the middle. These are finished seams, and then when we put the blue fabric behind it, we get the look we're looking for. Now this one was a little larger than we needed, so this is the one we're working on. Let me move these scissors. Now, in my machine, I've got a dark thread. I've got blue on the top and black on the bottom because I didn't have a blue bobbin handy. And we're going to take our 1/4 inch foot off and put, that's not the one I want, but that one will work. Oops, let's see. I don't know what's happened to it. I just had it last night, and now it's gone. We'll use this one. Okay, you just want a foot where you can see what you're doing. And we're going to set our machine at the shortest stitch it has. For me, that's 1.0. And we will start in the middle of a straight line. Let me check. I don't know that we're going to be able to see this. But we're going to start there in the middle of that, and we're just going to stitch on the line. Really super short stitch, and we're just going to take it slow, and we're going to stitch to the center of the star. All the way to where those two line up. And I think I'm going to switch this camera out and get it so we can see. We're going to start this now so you can see up close right what we're doing. Okay, we've stitched right to the edge of this. We're in the corner right here. And we're going to swing our machine around, needle down, and we're going to sew to the end of the point of the star. Okay. And we're going to swing it around. You notice how slow I was sewing because I want to make sure that we get all the way into those points. We weren't quite there. There we go. one more. Sometimes it's just that one stitch. It's going to give you enough room to really be able to tell this is a star and have nice sharp points. There we go. And we're getting close to back where we started. And then here we go. We're going to join back up to where we started. And I'm going to bypass that, just a couple of stitches, and then I'm going to put a lock stitch in. Okay, so we've stitched all around this square. Okay, so we've got that sewn now, and I'm going to show you a little bit of magic almost. We've stitched all around. Now, I will say, please take that very slow and pay close attention that you are sewing on that line and going out as far as you need to make sure you're past or you're at that point. Okay, and I'm going to trim these little threads up in the front and in the back. All right, now we need to take the paper off, and the great thing is because you use the tiniest stitch you have, that paper just comes off beautifully. Look at that. And then we need to take this off. Now, if you have a little bit of difficulty with your vision, you could trim it now before you take the paper off, but you will be dealing with some little tiny, tiny pieces of fabric, and I'm not sure how well that would go. Just want to get your nail or a pin or something right underneath that edge, and that will pull off. Okay, so here we go. This is the black side. You can see it just a little bit better. The black thread. No, I think this is the navy thread. It's hard to see. Get a few of those little paper remnants off. If you have a lint brush or a little eraser that you wanted to take it off with. I had an eraser. I don't know what happened to it. Okay, we've got it together. Now your first inclination is to cut around the star. No, you're going to cut inside the star. So the first thing we're going to do is fold it, and we're just going to cut a little piece out like that. We've cut inside that star. And now we're going to use our scissors. I would not use a rotary cutter because you're not going to be able to control your cuts. But we're going to take and we're going to cut the tiniest of pieces out that are going to be an 1/8 to a 1/16 inch away from that stitch line inside the star. And you want to be really careful that you don't cut through the seam line. And I think this might be a case where we need to get a little more light on the subject. That's really going to help. And I tend to go around this, like on the left side of the star points, and then come back and do the right side. Cut slow and carefully. And you know why I tell you that? It's because I've already made that mistake. You get in too big of a hurry and you end up cutting right through that stitch line. Okay. Now, this is pretty precise cutting, so pardon me if I take just a pause in my chatting to make sure we get it right. And I want to show you what it looks like before we do anything else. And there you go. That's what it looks like. We've cut it out. Now this could be trimmed up just a little bit more. Okay, so we've got it trimmed. Now what we need to do is two things. We need to clip the corners here. And there's not going to be much to clip, but clipping that will make those more crisp when you turn it. That one's cut a little close. Okay, so we've clipped those corners. And now we're going to clip right here just to get to that stitch line, not through it. And a nice small pair of scissors would be best, but of course there aren't any. So we're just going to take it slow. And it's not very far anyway. It may only be 1/8 of an inch that you're clipping. And you should be able to pull it slightly and see just how close you've clipped. Those look pretty good. Now, the moment of truth. We're going to flip this over. You're going to pull them apart, and then you're going to reach in there where there's one of these little areas here, and you're just going to push your finger through that all the way around to all 5 places. 3, 4, 5. Every time I've done this, I've had to do it at least twice just to make sure that I've got enough clipping done. And then you're going to take something with a point, but a round point, not a sharp point, something round that is not going to poke through. And I find that a well-used pencil is great because this is dark fabric. It won't show through, but it will give us the tool we need to get a nice point. And that's what you're looking for right there. You're looking for that point. And if we can get that on all of these, that's our first step with this process. So far it's looking good. If you need to, pull it back out and clip just a little bit more. Okay, this should be the last one. Okay, so we've got those. Now the other area of problem is this other inner corner. And you see that these are puckering a bit. So we need to come back out again. I know this is a pain, but this is exactly what I had to do both of the other times that I've done this. Okay, we've got all of those out. So if we turn it the original way, what you need to do to make that stop is come back in here and clip here so that you are as close to that line of stitches as possible, because that is what is causing that pucker. And as long as you don't cut through those stitches, you're going to be fine. Okay, so we're going to go back and do that process again. It should be a little bit easier this time. Oops, I'm sorry. I think I told you the wrong thing. What we're looking to do this second time is this one here. And you're just going to want to make sure that you clip it just a little bit closer and pull it just a little bit. If you can open it all the way, that's great. It may just be 1 or 2 pieces of fabric thread that you're going through. Okay, all right. I got a little confused there. The good thing about this is it's a small little piece of fabric, and if you need to do it again, it's not a huge process to do it again. Okay, we're poking those out. Boy, I made a mess on that little piece of fabric. Okay. Let's get that point in there just a little sharper. You can really see that star now coming together. Okay, and because of the way we did it, it's good on either side. So if one side looks a little better than the other, you can just flip it over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step over to the iron and press this so we can see it a little bit better, and then we'll move right on. Okay, we got that pressed. There's one side that looks a little bit better than the other side. We've got a little pucker there. So we're going to use the one that we're more happy with. That would be this one for me. And we're going to set it on top of the white square. Pin it down. We want to make sure that that white piece is flat underneath the blue piece. And then I'm just going to stitch around the edges with a very, very skinny seam allowance. We just want to hold it together. And the other thing is I am going to put my stitch really large. So if for some reason there's a problem, we can take that out. But that seam allowance is going to be 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch, just something to hold it together. Okay, you want to be careful too that you don't get a bird's nest and your fabric all in the machine, because you're sewing so close to the edge that could happen. Okay, so now this is all one piece. We don't have to worry about it shifting or moving around. I'm just going to trim up the sides a little bit, so all the extra threads. Okay, so we've got that one all together. Now, when you get ready to assemble this all together, because what I did was I got the flag together and then I pinned it on the background, and I'm going to be hand stitching it on. But if you wanted to, you could sew it on. If you didn't intend to wash this, if you were going to just use it as a wall hanging or something, you could glue it on, whatever your preference is. I am going to also be going in here and stitching down this blue onto the white in the center of this. You could do that by machine. You could do that by hand. On this one, I machine stitched right on the back of this. So on this one, I think I'm going to do it differently. I'm just going to hand stitch that down when I get ready to do this. We've got this ready. Now, our next step is going to be taking our 7 stripe piece and stitching it on. You want to find out which is the top, and I'm going to put a pin in the top so we don't end up with it cockeyed, unless you like it that way. We've trimmed off one side perpendicular, and we're just going to lay the stripe piece on top, right sides together. Okay. All right, so we've got these two pieces right side together. We've got our white thread in our machine. I'm going to just pin these together. This one was folded, so it's a little cantankerous, trying to keep its fold in there. Okay, so they're put together, right sides together. And then we're just going to do a 1/4 inch seam right along the edge and a regular like 2.4 stitch, because this is going to be your final seam here. Now when I'm working on something and I know I'm going to come right along right behind it and put another seam over that seam, I don't back stitch because the second seam is going to hold it. So we put that in and we've attached that. Now if you were wanting to do a little bunting, this would be cute as a button, as a little bunting for the holidays. If you didn't want to go with the full flag, you could just do some little banner things like this. So there we go. Now we're going to want this to fold in this direction towards the darker fabric. And normally I would go press this, but I think we can move on without it. And then we're going to attach this next strip. We need it trimmed on one end. I don't think that's been trimmed yet. And I'm using a square to make sure that I get it perpendicular. Yeah, this one has not been trimmed. I'm also looking at it and it looks like maybe in the pressing the seams aren't quite straight. So I'm kind of picking which one is the straightest of all of these. Okay, so there we go. And we're going to stitch the white to this. Now, we've put that edge here that we just trimmed to be perpendicular. So that it is at the exact same length as that side. And then we'll trim off the other side in just a minute. Okay. I'm not going to stitch this all the I'm not going to pin it all the way down because we're going to get started and we can manipulate this one as it goes through the machine. Again, we're going to use our white thread, 1/4 inch stitch. We're going to use the foot as our guide. Okay, and it's not advancing, so we're going to give it a little bit of a figure out what's going on there. I think it's very thick and it's not wanting to pull through. You don't want to go too far if that happens on you. Something you want to fix before it eats your fabric. We put a lot of work into that, so we don't want that to happen. I'm going to take just a little scrap of fabric and start this here. Okay. It was just a little thicker than it liked it. And then where we join into our stripes, it's going to be even thicker, so I'm going to hold that down and kind of encourage it through. No need to back stitch because we're going to trim it. Take our pins out. And we should have a flag. I'm going to stitch this. Excuse me, I'm not going to stitch it. I'm going to press it real quick. I'm going to press it real quick, and then I'm going to show you how to finish this off and tell you how to do around the edges really quick. I'll be right back. Okay, a quick press, and we have this. Nice, huh? We did that, right? Okay, now we need to trim it. That's going to be our next thing. And we're going to trim this, and it should be 6 1/4 by 11 1/4. Let's see what, we'll use this one. Your 6 1/4 should be the right size. I'm sorry, that is not right. It's 6 3/4 because we have seam allowances on the top and the bottom. Freaking me out there for a minute. Okay, and the finished size of this is 11 inches, so we need 11 1/2. So we're going to cut it at 11 1/2 inches. Let me double check that. I always like to double check because you know, you don't want to get... The finished size is 11 1/4, so we need to cut it at 11 3/4. No, we don't. 11 1/2. 11 1/2. And I'm going to change my notes right here. Add the other one in just a minute. We're going to cut at 11 1/2, and you have to be careful on these rulers because they are one thing on one side and one thing on the other side. So we're going to cut here. There we go. Okay, that's 11 1/2. And this is going to be what? I think it'd be easier with a smaller one. That's 6 1/2. 6 3/4 this way. All right, let's finish up this flag real quick. This is extra, we don't need that. Couple of things that I did to finish it up. First of all, I took a scrap piece of fabric. This is, that one's not quite 1 inch. Let's see what this one is. That's 1 inch. I took a 1 inch strip and I placed it on top of the flag here. Pin it in place. And we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam right down the middle, right down the side of that. All right, we've got that seam and we're just going to flip it over to the back. And what I did was I used some applique glue to applique that over to the back side. Because this is all going to be stitched down. This is just to hold it until you can stitch it. Okay. I can get it to stop sticking to my fingers. Okay, glue down. And now on the front side, you've got that nice sharp line. And if you've ever noticed on a flag, you always have that usually where the little grommets are. But that gives us a nice finished edge here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch all around the outside of this flag. Not this side, but the other three sides with a really long stitch in a white thread. And the reason we're going to do that is so we can fold over those sides, and I use the applique glue again to kind of hem it into a nice finished edge. And that gives us this. So at this point, you can lay this finished flag once it's folded under, and you can see there's my seam line right there. And you can glue it in place with the applique glue to hold it until you stitch it down. And then, like I said, you could stitch that by machine or by hand, whatever your choice is. If you wanted to just put it on permanently and you didn't plan to wash it, you could use some kind of fabric glue even. But that's the way that's going to look. I don't think we need to cover stitching around that. It's just stitch it and then fold it down like that. So it's going to give you a nice finished edge. And that's the way we're doing our block. Now, if you wanted to take this a step further, if you were really into embroidery or something like that, you could embroider some fireworks behind this. I think I'm going to try to look for a little piece of maybe cording, or make a tiny little bias strip to maybe make a gold tassel to come down here. I didn't have that on hand to finish this up today, but that might be something that I decide to add to this. I'm not sure. I think it looks really nice the way it is, that we may choose to just leave it that way, or you could embellish it some more if you like. But that's our block of the month for July. I hope you enjoy this. There's a lot of techniques in here that might be helpful for you. And that's the purpose of this, to kind of think creatively about things that you can do outside the box to create your own quilt. If there's something else for July that's important to you, change it up, make it your own. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and share with a friend. We enjoyed having you here today, and as always, we'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio.